I want to open this video with a little story. Not too long ago, I was invited to play some games on the wonderful world of Jackbox. We got this final round question on Quiplash. As you can see here from the responses I think are safe enough for work to broadcast to the entire internet, there's some negative responses here. Baseball has a little problem. It has great players that deserve the public spotlight for their talents, yet they're not fully in that public spotlight. The game is rich with incredible players right now that deserve a greater significance in our culture. A symbolic way to represent this problem is if you asked every American to name a baseball player. No such survey will ever be done, that's just way too difficult to pull off, but I am extremely confident that one of the top 3 answers, maybe even number 1, would be Alex Rodriguez. A-Rod has not played baseball since 2016. He has not been an MLB All-Star since 2012, but he is still, to this day, one of the most recognizable baseball players there is. Steroid stuff, his previous relationship with Jennifer Lopez, this meme photo, TV jobs, and now it's going to be an uphill battle for him to get into the Hall of Fame. A guy with almost 700 big league home runs. At large, baseball fans don't like A-Rod, but baseball fans underestimate the appeal that A-Rod has with, like, grandmas. Before this, A-Rod was one of the most successful and beloved athletes in all of sports.
I mean, you're Alex Rodriguez. You're A-Rod, You're one of the best to ever do it.
So that's what I want to focus on. There used to be a time where Alex Rodriguez was not unbelievably disliked. There was a time before A-Rod was consumed by controversy, before people cheered when he got hit by pitches, before people left mean YouTube comments on clips of him tripping over his shoelaces. In order to even get there, both in terms of popularity and level of hatred, he had to have some kind of rise to the top. We are going to talk about A-Rod. Seattle A-Rod. This is the strictly 80s Joel of baseball YouTube, I know. But that's the challenge we're going to embark on. Talking about A-Rod before his YouTube channel, before he yelled in the third baseman's face on a pop-up, before backyard baseball, before anything you've seen him do in the last 20 plus years. This is the A-Rod the world saw before all that. A-Rod's ascension begins with a cold hard fact anyone who saw him as a young player will tell you. Alex Rodriguez is the best high school baseball player who has ever lived. He was so good in high school that he tried out for the U.S. national baseball team before walking across the stage to get his diploma. Born in New York to Dominican immigrants, he moved around to the DR before eventually settling in Miami. By the time he was high school age, he was already becoming a local legend. As a senior, he batted .505. In a game where getting a hit 30% of the time makes you elite, he got a hit over half the time. He also drove in more runs and stole more bases than he played in games, over a full high school season. This is a great way of introducing you to A-Rod's baseball skill set. He was amazing at everything. I'll let him explain it more.
Just thinking being an all-around player that can beat you offensively, defensively, and with his legs. And someone who actually loved the thinking man part of the game.
The University of Miami's baseball team definitely wanted him, as did their even more dominant football team. But he'd never wind up playing college sports. He was just way beyond that already. Without even playing a game there, A-Rod is still totally ingrained in Miami's baseball culture. I went there for a vacation recently, and I can vouch for noticing that A-Rod is still a big part of Miami.
Figure out your portfolio.
Question. Where's A-Rod?
A-Rod's probably in Miami.
The used baseball stadium is now known as Alex Rodriguez Park. Oh, and if you ever go there, try one of the milkshakes. They literally have over 40 flavors. We're talking so much about this because while A-Rod was growing up here, he was already becoming a beloved sports figure. He was an everyman who grew up poor and had a tight circle of friends. He was a funny kid everyone seemed to like. He was respected in his community and by baseball as a whole. The Seattle Mariners drafted A-Rod first overall in the 1993 draft, which surprised absolutely no one. And he looked to have great perspective on this honor. Before the draft, he was quoted as saying, "It's a once-in-a-lifetime situation. If I stopped and looked at all the positives, I might stumble. I'm only 17, so I'll enjoy every moment and play hard and play to win." He was the clear-cut #1 prospect in the draft, and the Mariners seemed to have struck gold with him. This is also a draft where the Angels picked Marshall Faulk in the 43rd round. One small problem was going to challenge A-Rod's great wisdom for his age. Seattle is as far from Miami as you could physically get in Major League Baseball. While editing this video, I found this travel montage thing of someone driving from Miami to Seattle, and it's at this speed. The video is still 11 minutes long. That's how far apart these two places are. And his first minor league spot was in the also very far Appleton, Wisconsin, where they immediately started thrusting him into commercials.
I'm Alex Rodriguez, shortstop for the Foxes, and I'm inviting you to see great baseball at Gilman Field.
None of that seemed to matter. Whatever faraway city the Mariners stashed A-Rod in down in the minors, he produced all the same. Now let's have Peter Griffin talk as fast as A-Rod's minor league career lasted. Okay, so Alex Rodriguez was a minor leaguer for about as long as he was a senior in high school, which, if you've gone through senior year, you know that time flies. And he was only in the minors so short for a reason. As an 18-year-old, he hit .312 with a .376 OBP and .578 slugging percentage. He also hit 21 homers, 28 doubles, and 11 triples while also stealing 20 bases in the minors. His plate discipline was encouraging too, having walked a little more than half as often as he struck out, which is rare for kids only just old enough to know how to drive. It was clear as day that he was special, like no one had realized that already. So, about 1 year and 1 month after he was drafted, and 4 months after first taking the field as a professional, A-Rod was going to be a major leaguer. At 18, he was just the third shortstop of that age in MLB history, and the first 18-year-old to be on a big league roster in a decade. And in his first taste of big league baseball, he sucked. They sent him back down before the season ended. A-Rod came back for his next crack at big league baseball in May of 1995. He still sucked that year. Watching A-Rod hit for the Mariners his first 2 years was a lot like watching me play the home run derby minigame thing on Mario Party.
Stick to the videos, bro. You got two.
You know that great run everyone talks about from 1995 where the Mariners won some late regular season and playoff games to save baseball in Seattle? A-Rod was on that team, but he wasn't much of a contributor, at least statistically. He had just 2 at-bats in their entire playoff run. Neither one of them wound up being hits. So yeah, A-Rod was not a good Major League Baseball player at this point. He came back in 1996, and I swear to you, he had the best possible season anyone could have had in that spot. In what was the most underrated season in MLB history, at 20 years old, A-Rod led the American League in batting average, runs scored, doubles, and total bases. He finished second in hits and wins above replacement. He posted 9.4 wins above replacement in 1996 as a 20-year-old, which means the Mariners won almost 10 more games because they had him instead of a replacement caliber shortstop. And we're just getting started on this year, so strap in. You want to know why A-Rod was going to become so popular? He was the most unbelievable young all-around talent in the game, maybe ever at his age. He bum-rushed the record books way younger than anyone had any right to. It's like if this was his approach to record breaking.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
He had the best batting average in the American League in almost 60 years. He was the first infielder in 50 years to reach 90 extra base hits in a season in his first full MLB season. He was the youngest shortstop ever to be an All-Star, and he was unequivocally the best single-season power-hitting shortstop in history to that point, setting the record for highest slugging percentage by a shortstop in history. He was 2 years younger than I am right now. Slugging percentage is basically bases per at-bat, and A-Rod was always on base and causing damage to the other team. It is generally accepted that this season was totally clean. No steroids, none of the performance-enhancing drugs that would dominate the end of his career, but this video is not about that. His reward for one of the best seasons in baseball history was a lot of attention and photo shoots. Check out this unbelievable photo of A-Rod and 4 other really young MLB shortstops at the time. Mandatory shirtless gold chain picture. Fuzzy's gonna tell his kids that they were Maroon 5, but I don't think these guys have anywhere near the capability to make a song as good as Sunday Morning. That's just me though. You may recognize this guy in the bottom right hand corner. That's Derek Jeter. Jeter's relationship with A-Rod mirrors the public's perception of him. Before they were teammates, Jeter and A-Rod could always be seen smiling, looking like the best of friends together early in their careers. And that's because A-Rod was lovable. My mom, who does not actively keep up with baseball whatsoever, had this A-Rod pin. That pin now sits on my desk next to my Lane Kiffin button. My mom was also gonna go to an A-Rod autograph signing that she missed because a certain, dude was born that week. That's the kind of appeal he had. He earned it. He was really good and really marketable.
I'm not even in a cereal box, but man, I could care less.
In 1996, 10 writers voted for a 20-year-old A-Rod to be the AL MVP. 11 people voted for Juan Gonzalez, who just barely won the award, completely robbing A-Rod. Throwing their stats on screen, this is a first scene of the Dark Knight kind of robbery. Moving on to 1997, A-Rod had a solid year, but nothing like 1996. It's probably not fair to show the stats very long because they are very good, but 1996 sets this near unreachable standard for 99.9999% of players. So it is truly unfair to expect anyone to do that consistently. Still one of the best and most popular players in the game, he was adding to his notoriety by taking thirst trap photos. A lot of them. Girls were en masse asking him to prom way before social media promposals happened, or were even a thought. He had young people in the palm of his hands with the right mix of humility and charm that you'd want. Even if my man had zero drip back in 97. Like, bro, what is this fit? Oh, and the commercials? They were still there too.
This is the big league.
Eagle Hardware and Garden. More of everything.
1998 had more history on the field. A-Rod, at just 22 years old, became the third player in baseball history to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases in a season. The players voted him as the best player in the American League that year. WAR agreed. Even before A-Rod became the player and the man he's perceived to be today, he was the best player in the league. By age 22, if it even took that long, the writers put him as the 9th best player in the American League, which makes zero sense. Who'd they think was the best? Stop. Back in 98, Alex Rodriguez was already a baseball legend. But again, everyone saw him different. Everyone knew the home runs, everyone knew the stolen bases, everyone knew the smile. But he wasn't going on dates with Jennifer Lopez. He was simply saying he wanted to.
Jennifer Lopez. Hopefully you can find me a date with her.
A guy Mark Anthony didn't have to worry about. You know Mark Anthony has the most sold out shows of any art. Hey, this isn't my fault. It's Tizo touchdowns. See? He's right there on the screen. A-Rod missed a bit of time in 99 with an injury, but when he was on the field, he was still about the same player. He hit 42 home runs again, drove in 111 runs, and posted rate stats right in line with where they were the year before. But because of the injury, he wasn't an all-star, and he didn't get much recognition in the MVP race. The Mariners weren't doing much in the postseason either, so there's not much to talk about with 1999. Meanwhile, in 2000, he was way more healthy and kicked off the new millennium with an absolute bang. His OPS went back over 1,000, he set a career high for RBI and on-base percentage. His OPS Plus, which is basically an attempt at a hitting stat that condenses performance down to one number, was even better than it was in 1996. And his WAR finally broke 10, 10.4 to be exact. Still on top of the world as the best all-around player in baseball. He could do the most amount of unique good things on the field out of anyone in the sport. His skill set was that deep and that perfected. You name it, he could do it. And he could do it really well. But a dark cloud hung over that 2000 season. Everyone in baseball knew that his contract with the Mariners was gonna be up after the Mariners' year ended. And everyone knew he was gonna get paid that offseason. A lot of money. He played out that 2000 season, finishing with the Mariners one stage short of the World Series, and with it being super obvious that an outside team was going to hand A-Rod a blank check, the broadcasters knew that going into his final at-bat of the 2000 playoffs that this would be the end of an era for Alex. How'd he wrap it up?
And he drives one to deep left, back near the wall, and gone.
A matter of minutes later, A-Rod would leave the field for the Mariners for the last time. He would never put their uniform on again.
If that's the way he says goodbye, he does it with some style.
And that offseason, change came in. Not just in location, but in personality. By his own admission, he would lose sight of himself. He wasn't the same person anymore.
I really feel that it's important to be nice.
Alex puts it into perspective like this. What A-Rod truly wanted to do with his life starting in the 2001 season was play shortstop for the New York Mets. He's always loved the Mets since he was a kid. He even tried to buy them a few years back. The Mets are truly where his heart has been at, even if he won't ever come out and say it because, the Mets were interested, but not at the asking price of him and his agent Scott Boras. It's not even really about money when you say they wouldn't meet the asking price. It was about other things A-Rod's camp wanted. A-Rod did want the biggest contract in history, and as a free agent going into his age 25 season with the track record he definitely had a really good case for deserving it. That's not even mentioning the off-the-field benefits your team could have by having A-Rod on it, but you could tell his humble attitude shifted when money like that was becoming the least problematic demand. With the Mets, A-Rod's requests included a Shea Stadium office, a marketing staff, a merchandise tent at spring training, a luxury box, use of a private jet, and more billboards than Jeter could count. He also wanted a clause in his contract that would have kept him as the highest paid player in the game, no matter what. So if a team gave someone else a big deal that surpassed his, he wanted another payday. The Chicago Tribune published an A-Rod quote and subsequent follow-up statement in their article about this saga that says a lot. My mom always told me that grass is not always greener on the other side. Fortunately for A-Rod, the grass will be green wherever he winds up. Here's the thing. The grass wasn't as green as it seemed where A-Rod did wind up. The Mets didn't want to put up with any of these demands. They were afraid of a 24+1 mindset. So A-Rod didn't get to sign there, which he is very open about regretting today. But whether or not it was A-Rod personally asking for these things or him standing by while his team did, he tanked some of his reputation in the game. He was the greedy guy. He did do one thing right after leaving Seattle. He showed love to John Olerud.
Although I'm going to walk up to John Olerud, I might be playing with his helmet tonight.
If there's one thing I'm always going to appreciate, it's caring about John Olerud. I love that guy. The Texas Rangers would then sign him for an ungodly amount of money. He signed over 20 years ago, and that deal is still the 12th largest sports contract of all time. We live in a time where guys have signed for over $500 million, and this A-Rod deal from before Jimmy Neutron came out is still close to the top. Nowadays, the money in sports is way bigger than it was back then, but A-Rod's contract with Texas still looked like that. The rest, as they say, was history. But first, case in point, A-Rod's first time back in Seattle after leaving. This right here represents the entire shift of how Alex Rodriguez was looked at. It embodies it better than maybe anything else. When he came back to Seattle, he was met with thundering boos. It wasn't the Jerry Seinfeld bit about sports fans blindly hating their team's former players just because they're in different clothes now.
This is the same human being in a different shirt. They hate him now.
It was about how he left, not that he left. And that meant a lot, not only just to Seattle Mariners fans, but to the baseball community as a whole. Everything changed after A-Rod moved on from Seattle. He wasn't as lovable, he wasn't as respected, and he wasn't as clean. He transformed into what he's seen as today. He finished his career with almost 120 WAR, the 16th most all time. Top 16 in a game where Major League Baseball's first acknowledged season was in 1869, about 30 years before t-shirts were invented. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it's going to be an uphill battle for him to get there. A player that good and that talented got just 34.3% of the Hall of Fame voting his first year on the ballot. You need 75% to get in. One of the most significant players in history, and one of the best, is facing that. That's how insanely complicated everything that came after Seattle was. What I've said, and what I've shown here, is supposed to show you how any of that was even made possible. Whatever mistakes he made after shouldn't wipe this from history. If anything, it's important to know why someone as complex and controversial as A-Rod could have gotten to that position in the first place. You need to understand, on and off a baseball field, there was a time where A-Rod was pure and universally loved, and that shouldn't be forgotten.